Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Boris Tizengausen with you. Today is September 18th and there are a lot of interesting news stories. In this episode, we'll discuss a very unusual sabotage in the occupied part of the Zaporizhzhia region, which claimed the lives of 18 officers from the Russian Federation Army headquarters. And Ukrainian drones continue the de-oiling of Russia. Last night, two very large facilities were hit. Across Europe, Russian spies and saboteurs are being caught in droves. Poland is closing its border with Belarus indefinitely, and for Moscow, this is a real nightmare. Meanwhile, in Russia itself, they're launching an Orthodox messenger app. Soon, you'll be able to excommunicate people online. Donald Trump is making waves again in Britain with this performance. Buckingham Palace will remember this for a long time. All this and more in today's episode. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff. So if you're new to this channel, subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. Don't miss out! Today, information emerged about a very interesting operation by our military, or perhaps partisans, in the occupied part of the Zaporizhzhia region. This operation clearly demonstrates that careless handling of fire isn't always a bad thing. 18 officers from the operational staff of the 35th Combined Arms Army were killed as a result of this sabotage. Well, it happened at the end of last month, but now information and specific details have now emerged. So, near the settlement of Voskresenko, some unknown well-wishers set fire to dry grass near the command post of the 35th Army. Well, the fire spread very quickly. There was heat, dry weather, and not only the fire but also the smoke got into the buildings, into the command post's dugout. So, as it turned out, 18 officers ended up being a little less than alive, among whom very high-value targets in every sense: the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Missile Forces and Artillery Department of the 35th Separate Army, the Deputy Chief of the General Operational Planning Department, the head of the Fire and Nuclear Strike Planning Division, all colonels and lieutenant colonels, none lower than that. Plus, there are 15 other officers on the list, but we won't name them all here. So, as they say, the foxes got hold of some matches. And that's what happens when you come to someone else's land to kill peaceful civilians. That's exactly how it will be. And once again, Ukrainian drones have sent their regards to several more oil refineries. The pace at which Ukraine is carrying out this de-oilification of Russia is simply astonishing. First of all, today in Bashkortostan, drones attacked the Gazprom Neftkhim Salavat oil refinery. Local authorities are reporting this as some kind of terrorist act, drone aircraft, and so on and so on. 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine. I looked at this facility on the map. It's just enormous. It's like an entire city. There are even streets there with numbers and everything, just as it should be. And this Gazprom Neftkhim Salavat actually consists of 3 plants. There's an oil refinery and 2 gas chemical plants. In short, a very serious hit, and apparently they struck more than 1 primary processing unit there. And that's not all. Special Operations Forces also struck the Volgograd oil refinery today, so it's basically like hitting the jackpot. This refinery is the largest producer of petroleum products in the Southern Federal District, 15.7 million tons per year, which is almost 6% of all oil processing in Russia. So in short, according to preliminary information, this plant has been shut down. So 2 very significant targets. Like I said, the sanctions from the SBU, from the GRU, from Madiyar, these sanctions are much more powerful overnight than some entire sanction packages sometimes are. And friends, let me remind you that we have an important fundraiser for our combat medics, for the 1st Separate Medical Battalion, for our 1st Medbat, for our medics and surgeons who save lives every day for our defenders, risking their own lives in the process. They reached out to us, directly to this channel. I'll show you this video again. Look at how amazing they are, how young they are, how genuine they are. Military medicine is not just about working in operating rooms. It's about constantly building stabilization points, field hospitals, and other places to work. It's a constant risk of moving around, it's logistics and vehicle repairs. And this requires a constant supply of resources, meaning money. When a need arises, we don't have time to gather or search for long. We have to work quickly. Together with Boris Tizengausen's channel, we are announcing a fundraiser for our unit's needs. We are raising 800,000 hryvnias for the battalion's needs, specifically for building materials, equipment, vehicle repairs, and consumables. This money will help us work efficiently and quickly meet our needs. We thank everyone who helps our unit. Your support helps save lives. Every time I watch this video, I think about how bright and awesome they all are. Let's help them. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There is Privat, there is Mono, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. I see everyone, and I want to say a huge thank you to all for helping our guardian angels, our defenders. And in this case, your donation can literally save a life. That is in the most direct sense. Well, in the swamps, predictable things are happening. The Orthodox messenger Zosima will be presented before Halloween. I read this news today and I wonder what is even going on there. The Zosima messenger will be presented on October 30th. I remember I heard about it last year. They wanted to present it before Halloween last year, but as always in Russia, they didn't make it in time and postponed it. Now the date is set for the day before Halloween. On October 30th, the Orthodox messenger will be presented. Attention, it's for Android mobile devices on Android and for those mobile devices that run on iOS. Well, basically for iPhones. How does that work? Why does an Orthodox messenger run on a completely non-Orthodox operating system? On a system, I would say, with some alien values. So basically, this app will have chats by parishes, spiritual topics, and swearing, dark humor, and memes will be strictly prohibited. Especially memes about the Russian Orthodox Church. Breaking the rules will result in an immediate and permanent ban. Oh, look at that. Actually, I'd like to remind you that in an Orthodox messenger you won't just get banned. That's not what it's called. I don't know, maybe you'll be immediately anathematized instead. For especially egregious and repeated violations, they might even perform an online funeral service for those users right away. Honestly, I don't know why we need an Orthodox messenger. Supposedly, there will be blogs from clergy. I'll show you a bit later what they write about. And by the way, they have a new statement that will make your eyes as wide as mine are now, maybe even wider. Anyway, you'll be able to share news about parishes in this Orthodox messenger. This is just a godsend for the followers of Putin, sharing news about parishes. Checherinna, Dyuzhev, Oklobaistin, who regularly experience these parishes. This is exactly for you. Share news about parishes. There's also Katya Lel, whose teeth were stolen by aliens and then returned to her. This is not a joke. And she herself talked about it on Kochevnikov's show, who also periodically shares news about parishes there. So everyone over there, everyone to the Orthodox Messenger app, there will be parish news there that even the most hardcore couldn't dream of. Basically, they just decided to digitize the townspeople to make them easier to control. It was always possible to find those who didn't bring the money on time. Now you won't even need to go to church. Knock, knock, knock. Your priest just messaged you in the app. Igor, it's been a while since we've received any donations from you. Are you feeling unwell? No. Then why haven't there been any donations? So, this multi-layered monitoring system, National Messenger, Orthodox Messenger, soon there will probably be some messenger for traditional values, a patriotic messenger. This is all what's already happening with the Russian. By the way, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, is being asked not to be allowed into Kazakhstan. And the wording is very apt. He blesses the weapons that are used to kill Orthodox Ukrainians. In Kazakhstan, there are demands not to let the head of the Russian Orthodox Church attend the religious congress. Let me remind you, sorry. He doesn't just bless the weapons, he also blesses this war and calls it a holy war. Respect to Kazakhstan, by the way, as always, sending you my best regards. And do you know who the initiator is? I specifically wrote down the name of this brave person, the head of the public association Demos, Turar Kusainov. He was the one who appealed to the chairman of the Senate of the Parliament, demanding that Patriarch Kirill not be allowed in. He believes that Patriarch Kirill has no right to participate in the Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions. Good for him. I know I have a lot of subscribers from Kazakhstan. If anyone knows this worthy person, please pass on my warmest regards and those of Ukrainians to him. But the authorities in Kazakhstan have a different opinion. Mr. Kusainov was planning to hold solo pickets in front of the Russian consulate in Kazakhstan, but he was denied permission. And A representative, the chairman of the Senate of Kazakhstan, stated that they are eagerly awaiting Patriarch Kirill's participation in the Astana Congress and called it a great honor for the host side. But in the case of Patriarch Kirill, this Congress won't be the Astana Congress, but the Satanic Congress. You might as well rename it right away. As for the position of the Kazakh authorities, well, I think everything is clear here. As they say, strike while the iron is hot, while Russia is under sanctions. Make as much money as you can and export as much as you can. Well, the fact that supplying goods to Russia in circumvention of sanctions is a direct policy and fuels the war, and that this costs innocent lives apparently for some, is a secondary issue. By the way, about the Russian Orthodox Church and their fantastic world, what I told you about. The kind of thing that will make your eyes go wide. If you search for the Russian Orthodox Church, in almost 100% of cases, one of the news stories will seem extremely cringeworthy to you. Today is no exception. I thought, let me check what's going on in the Russian Orthodox Church now. So, the Russian Orthodox Church explained that men kissing each other on the lips is not a sin. In other words, Orthodoxy does not forbid believers of the same sex from kissing on the lips, cheeks, or shoulders if it aligns with tradition. This was reported by Hieromonk Makary. And let me remind you that in Russia, for some reason, LGBT is considered the gravest sin. They don't even condemn serial killers as harshly as they do LGBT people. When I talked with the guys from the RDK, the Russian Volunteer Corps, they enlightened me about how this world works in Putin's Russia, the world of traditional values. So corruption there, that's not a problem at all. It just means you got lucky enough to climb the food chain to the point where you can steal. But cruelty, sadism, even taking someone's life doesn't provoke as much anger as LGBT people do. You see, it's paradoxical. They look at the stage, for example, there's Kirkorov and Shaman jumping around in leather leggings with wings, feathers and all that, and Baskov too. Well, that's all considered good. But if someone on the street has a different hair color or long hair, that's it. Oh no, that's bad. I mean men, of course. That's how things work there. It's some kind of wonderful world, really wonderful. Why do you think they're most afraid of LGBT people? Write your answers in the comments. By the way, friends, don't forget. I tell myself that sometimes too. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's hit the bottom layers of the swamps with calm analysis, set the equators on fire for fans of the Russian world, and as they say, stir things up in Orthodox messengers. So make sure to subscribe. Lukashenko didn't manage to play dumb, and he's still facing serious problems. Although the military exercises in Belarus have ended, they went by rather vaguely. By the way, Putin went all the way to the other end of Russia to watch these exercises. So, of course, he didn't come to Belarus. But Poland has decided to keep the border closed indefinitely, thereby blocking a trade artery between China and the European Union worth, attention, 25 billion euros a year. This is reported by Politico, and against this backdrop, China is quickly launching a container ship to Europe via the melting Arctic along the Northern Sea route. Meanwhile, the Polish government states that traffic will be restored as soon as the border is completely safe. But when it will become completely safe is unclear. I mean, I don't know if Belarus controls the Russian drones that fly into Poland from its territory. I think at the very least not completely. And as for the route through the Arctic, a lot depends on the season. That is, first of all, icebreakers are needed there to escort the container ships. Well, there are a lot of buts. So China is already sending a container ship escorted by icebreakers to a British port, even though it doesn't yet know when this border will open. And not so long ago, the Russian Foreign Ministry was really outraged. Zakharova was banging her little hands and feet. Open the border, Poles, you have no right not to. We only sent you 20 drones and this is how you behave. We're holding nuclear exercises near your borders and you act so rudely. In general, they were nervous, but it's clear why Russia is nervous. This also hits them very hard because it directly damages Russian logistics. Some Russian cargo, fertilizers, metals, timber, and, by the way, dual-use goods, were transported through this corridor disguised as Chinese or Belarusian. So it was a kind of gray area for bypassing sanctions. Now the channel is blocked. And you know what else Russia is afraid of? That seeing how unstable the situation is with both Putin and Lukashenko, people will start looking for other ways to bypass sanctions. Through Kazakhstan, through the Caspian, through Turkey, the Northern Sea route. And Moscow will lose its levers of influence, meaning the control over this corridor. That's why, in the end, China will simultaneously develop all alternative routes so as not to depend on the political situation in Belarus. And as for Trump, at the royal banquet in Britain, he praised Shakespeare and Tolkien and said he would probably never see them again. I'm quoting, sorry. Shakespeare, Dickens, Tolkien, Lewis, Orwell, Kipling, astonishing people, incredible people, whom we have rarely seen before, and perhaps will never see again, said the US president, listing British writers. Who was criticizing Biden again? Let me remind you that yesterday, not only did Trump pat the king on the shoulder, bypassing some etiquette in a roundabout way, but he also walked ahead of the king and spoke with a guardsman. In short, Trump being Trump, as always. Here's an interesting piece of news, and it seems very, well, simple, but it will have rather serious consequences for Europe. Lithuania has accused Russians linked to intelligence services of organizing parcel bombings in Europe. In other words, what happened in the summer of 2024 in Europe, remember, the DHL and DPD parcel explosions, was organized and overseen by Russian citizens connected to Russian military intelligence. Well, did anyone really doubt that? That is, explosive devices were found in those parcels, which were activated by electronic timers. And it was established that these individuals maintained secrecy. They had passports under. Moreover, one of them was a Ukrainian citizen. He had both a Ukrainian passport and a Russian passport. And one of them even had a Lithuanian passport. In short, they organized these arson attacks and explosions. 4 such shipments were sent from Lithuania in 2024. So specifically, these individuals and their group were sending them directly from Lithuania to the UK, Poland, and Germany. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but they also found a large number of components for making new bombs. So you might wonder, why set packages on fire, why set an IKEA store on fire like they did? The thing is, this isn't just a series of criminal incidents. It's a much broader campaign, which in the practical work of intelligence agencies is called a hybrid or asymmetric war with active measures. This also includes arson attacks on warehouses, interference with railway infrastructure in European countries, and, by the way, disruptions to the navigation of air and sea vessels, as well as many other incidents that these are all at a sub-threshold level of warfare and are precisely elements of this hybrid war. The objective? There are several objectives. The main one is to sow chaos and fear. In other words, to destabilize the enemy's logistics and economy. The costs are minimal. Well, how much does it take to make that device? For that, I don't know, just a few dozen grams of powder, magnesium, or some other incendiary element. How much is really needed? Not much. You just slip a little package in, and then when a giant warehouse goes up in flames afterwards, that's serious. So the costs are minimal. And as for agents, Russia doesn't really spend on them. They already have agents in European countries. They just hire those who are the actual end performers, like, take this and deliver it. They don't pay them much. That's why all these explosions and arson attacks in logistics chains, hubs, and containers drive up serious costs. They increase insurance, cause supply disruptions, raise security concerns, and so on. And on top of that, they create fear and political pressure. By the way, this also includes attacks on the heads of arms companies. Remember, there have been such cases, so it's a series of similar incidents. There was a fire here, there was an impact on the railway infrastructure there, a warehouse was set on fire somewhere else, they say it was sabotage. All of this fills the information space with news, and it starts to feel unsettling, even in Europe, where there is no war right now. And after all these arsons, explosions, and so on, special services have to be redeployed, the police get overloaded, resources are spent. Much larger budgets are allocated for security. And of course, one of the key elements is cyber attacks, including those targeting infrastructure and energy facilities. It's frightening, uncertain, and ultimately leads to panic.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Security measures are being tightened, for example, inspections. Here's a European who, well, there's no war where he lives, he just goes about his life, arrives at the airport and proceeds. He heads to his flight and sees that there are some additional security measures. There are new security gates, inspections, dogs, and other procedures, so he realizes that he's about to board a plane and fly. But why are there suddenly these extra security measures? More police, maybe even bomb disposal experts or something like that? Well, anything can happen. And he understands that something isn't right. That's the essence of all these comprehensive measures. Of course, it's going to be unpleasant, but there's one big problem. Disciplined Europe doesn't want to act in a mirror-like way, and that's a big mistake. Putin, notice he always boasts that the Kremlin responds in kind. He says, we respond in kind. Well, maybe not exactly in kind, but we always respond. Those are Putin's words. He's actually giving you a hint himself about how you should talk to him, how you should act. In response to the burned down IKEA, burned down their 5 largest logistics warehouses in Russia, it's not a problem to use the same method. It's not a problem to pack a parcel. It's not a problem to add a little magnesium powder. Just burn them down. I understand that this is outside the legal framework, that you can't do that. We're a civilized state after all. As long as you don't respond to Putin with an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, as they say, he'll keep doing the same thing. And he needs to understand that in response to his nastiness, he'll get a blow right across the face. Not just one, but both of his Botoxed cheeks. As for how Europe is reacting now, strengthening security measures, that's the right thing to do, but that's exactly what he wants. Additional budgets, billions and billions of euros for extra security. He'll spend money recruiting 2 or 3 unreliable operatives. Europe will spend disproportionate budgets in response. Meanwhile, the forces of good are still hesitating. Good is still without fists, even though it should have them. Evil acts without hesitation and grows stronger. Russia is suspected of helping North Korea build nuclear submarines. In response to Putin sending troops, millions of shells were sent. South Korean intelligence agencies are investigating the possible transfer of reactor components for nuclear submarines to North Korea. By the way, I saw another report today, I can't remember where exactly, that actually says Putin is tricking Kim Jong-un, telling him fairy tales, promising him some kind of satellite access. But in reality, he's just deceiving him. So there are different versions. But South Korean intelligence agencies report that in the first half of the year, Moscow allegedly supplied North Korea with 2 or 3 modules, including nuclear reactor cores, turbines, and cooling systems, which were removed from decommissioned Russian submarines. Well, that's exactly what I was talking about. I don't know, Kim Jong-un, if China ends up giving him an entire submarine, then maybe. So for Kim, this could mean a breakthrough in his years-long effort to create a nuclear naval fleet. Well, at this rate, soon we'll see that the Taliban will get nuclear weapons and the whole world will just calmly watch. And Donald Trump will say that the Taliban are not bad guys. Really? Yeah, not bad. He might even make a deal with them, with Afghanistan, about rare earth elements. Could Donald Trump say something like that? Oh right, he already said that, sorry. During his first term in September 2017, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Trump met with the president of Afghanistan and talked about a grand deal on rare earth elements. Figures ranging from $1 to $3 trillion were mentioned. It was going to be a super-duper deal. The idea was, yes, it probably sounded like this. An American investor would come in and no one would dare touch American business. That's probably how it sounded. Well, in the end, we remember how it all turned out. In 2021, it wasn't American business that came, it was the Taliban. And what happened next, we all know very well. And those scenes, well, those shocking scenes, when people tried to escape by clinging to the landing gear of airplanes, you see over there now, well, they simply wouldn't survive. But they knew for sure they wouldn't survive there. But maybe, just maybe, over there something could work out, though that was unlikely too. Yeah. Well, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel, and let's support our medical workers, our brave guardian angels. Wishing us all a peaceful day and glory to Ukraine.